Okay, I think let's get started because I want to respect everybody's time. Everyone is busy. So welcome everyone. Let me pull my slides on. And go to the presentation mode. Okay, now I'm going to change this to a more convenient way of going through. So this is our 4th out of 6 meetings, and we will be talking about quality management, this time applied expertise, communicating, educating, reporting, and advising. So briefly, again, we will be talking about some tips for the exams. You will hear them at every single session. It's important to plan well, plan for success. That's always the right approach. We do not leave it to go by chance. So there are 165 multiple choice questions. 150 are graded and count. We don't know which ones. You don't know which ones. You have 3.5 hours, which is approximately 1.5 minutes per question. If you are not English speaker as your first language, consider taking additional time, which is 1 hour at the testing center, 2 hours if you do it online. It will give you the comfort if you are not sure, if you want to read something several times, and you wouldn't have that much time stress. That will basically give you, I would say, more convenience in case you find a word or a phrase that is not so familiar, or the sentence seems complicated. Practice exam is now free of charge. It's a little bit aging, it's a little bit outdated, but still it gives the feel how the exam goes. I think somebody is not muted and I hear voices in the background, so please check your microphones.
যেখানে আয়না থাকবে, যদি যেরকম জয়ী যদি জিমন্যাস্টিক কি ডান্স করতে চায়, she needs music, তো ওখানে যেন দুটো ওরকমই সকার প্লাগ পয়েন্ট ওর মাঝখানে।
Mutoshi, can you just mute yourself, please? Thank you. There might be some things that you don't want to be heard by everyone, so be careful. The exam covers 3 basic regulations and 1 guideline, which is a regulation outside US. So that's ICHE 6, because that's incorporated in EU regulations as it is. So ICHE 6 is regulation in EU and in many other places around the world. Then we have FDA 21 CFR and 21 CFR Part 11, which is about electronic signatures, computerized systems, and their use in regulated areas. You have the candidate handbook available. Read the suggested materials. There are many references, so go to them. You are not expected to learn that this or that is exactly at this paragraph and this particular section, but it's good to know what the regulations talk about, the preambles that give the scope of the regulations, and take the most conservative approach when you answer any the questions in the exam. This may be different from what you do at your company. Regulations don't give us a recipe. They tell us what we should finally achieve. The way to get there might be different per company, its structure, size, focus on operations, and so on. Read the tips. Here is a hyperlink that you can follow, and it will take you right to the place on the SQA website. Always read the questions carefully. If it looks long or complicated, consider leaving it for later. Watch your time. And if you are not sure, try to guess. Most likely you would be able to exclude 2 answers straight away. And then you will be left with 2, so you have 50% chance of success, and of course 50% chance of failure, but why not to give it a try? Watch keywords. And keywords in questions should be somehow matching keywords in the answers. So if you have an important word which is missing in the answer, or the answer says something slightly different which contradicts the keywords in the question, then most likely it's not the correct answer. Choose strategy that works for you. You've heard about those strategies from Melanie in our joint session. Don't second guess your answers. I get it wrong. Typically, instinctively and by experience, I answer correctly if I take any kind of test. And then I start reanalyzing and I make all the mistakes. And you may be facing the same. So let's move to our topic, communicating, educating, reporting, and advising. Jenny, would you like to add some tips for the exam before we move forward?
Hi, sorry, I turned off my video and my mute because I've unstable internet. But no, I agree with you. I think I always feel like when I get things wrong, it's often I've second guessed my decision and changed it. But I agree with everything Kamala has said. Is skip ones that you're unsure about, or mark them, answer them and mark them, and then if you have time later, then you can go back and maybe kind of with fresh eyes after digesting these other questions that you look at it a little differently. But I don't have anything else to add.
Thank you. I would just add one more thing. Sometimes later question, which might be somehow related to the question that causes you a trouble, will guide you to the right answer. So it may be about a similar situation or something where you are really sure. And you say, yeah, but this also applies over there. So keep those questions in mind and think about it. If something is related and you are sure about one answer, it may be guiding you towards the correct answer in the other case. GCP E6, ICH E6 GCP, talks about several types of communication. Importantly, it's risk communication. I put here the quote, you can read it for yourself. The other thing that is about communication are all kinds of management reviews or GCP committees, quality councils, whatever it may be called, reporting of quality metrics to management, audit metrics, observations, kappa. And in every study that follows GCP, and not every study follows GCP, because studies with devices, they follow ISO 14155. This is the GCP for device studies. And post-marketing observational studies, they are guided by pharmacovigilance guidelines, not GCP, although some parts of GCP are related to consenting and so on apply. Not all GCP really applies, but some PD regulations apply. So in every study, there will be some communication plan. And typically, a good way to derive a good communication plan is to chart the study team, meaning the sponsor, the CRO, the third parties, and so on, sites, the organogram for the study. And if you get it right, if you get the right counterparts, who talks to who are on the same level, who is reporting to who, then it will give you also where the directions come from and where they go, and where information goes up and any kind of updates, say to the project manager who finally consolidates the reports and so on, uses it for project management. So this organogram will help you to create good communication plan and good escalation plan. And escalations are always also driven by SOPs, meaning if there is a critical issue, how fast it should be reported to management, who should be involved, Is QA involved right from the beginning? Is not involved from the beginning? Because operations and QA, these are different departments, but they should be talking for vendor qualification, requalification, CAPAs, audits, and so on and so forth. So these departments should not be sitting siloed. They must talk together for the success of any study. Educating and advising. We have here one quote, selection and qualification of auditors. And if you see training and experience, here we don't have the education like we have for investigators, education, training, and experience. But training and experience is for both auditors and monitors. There is no university curriculum, or not many, a couple of them might be, for compliance auditors, but they are very sparse. So the training and the experience, that's the key to make sure that the auditor does a good job and can also synthesize and see the bigger picture. How do we educate our auditees about the audit process? For me, a good thing is to have a pre-audit meeting to get to know each other, talk about how the audit is going to be conducted, have no surprises, make kind of alignment, what is the scope, what the auditor is going to look at, get any kind of feedback from the side, and start creating a working relationship, because both the auditor and the auditee are on the same boat. They are not opponents. It's not a chess game. It's not any kind of match with two opposing parties playing against each other. All of them have one objective: successful study with high quality data, safety of the participants, their well-being. So they must be playing together to achieve this objective. And advising, that's outside the audit process, but in many times we can see in GCP, unlike GMP, for example, or GLP, that the GCP auditor, when he or she audits the site, is also expected to explain and advise. It's not just finding who to blame, and it should not ever be finding who to blame. And it's not about being like the FDA inspector. You failed to follow or to comply with this or this and that. Let's leave it to the inspectors. We are in a slightly different position as GCP auditors, and I always want the sites to understand why something needs to change. What happens if it doesn't change? And that helps people to be more motivated. If they see maybe the long-term consequences, if they just ignore the recommendations, and help and educate and provide support. So we have a kind of unique position, because our colleagues in some other areas, or let's say ISO compliance auditors, they are not allowed to advise. They cannot. They cannot have the head of both advising and auditing, and maybe it's a kind of short training in the same time. It's prohibited by the relevant standards, but we can and we should help the auditees to understand better, do a better job, and to care if they don't too much, or if they maybe are not so experienced and don't understand or misunderstood something. Some protocols are so difficult that I can't blame any side for deviating, because I would be deviating if I'm the investigator. It's very difficult to find out actually what one should do. This comes with bad designs. This is not our topic today, but many times as auditors we can track deviations to unclear protocols, confusing sections, confusing or contradicting instructions. And that would be my finding against the CRO, against the sponsor. It's not always just against the site. So see it whole. And we have different types of reports as QA. audit reports, quality metrics, notifying the FDA if we need to terminate investigators' participation. That's per FDA CFR 21.312.56b. It's not important, this particular citation. In devices, it's the management representation and reporting the performance of the quality system. An audit's report should be reviewed by management. Audit reports and our quality metric reports and quality compliance reports, they are not there to be shelved. There is a reason for them. And that's actually the reason is one of the questions in the practice exam, and most likely at least one question in the real exam. I suggest we do it differently this time, because you can go through the practice exam on your own. But I put some discussion questions, and I tried to keep the logic of the exam question or the practice exam question and create a slightly different question or scenario. So allow me just to escape now from the presentation mode, switch quickly to the discussion questions. And if we have time, we will go back to the practice exam. So now, Jenny, would you read this one, please?
Yes, and also after this, we have a chat question.
Okay,
To
so
preserve.
let's go with the question in the chat because I can't see it.
Okay, and I just minimized it. It's is there a way to mark out eliminated answers? And I wasn't sure exactly what you meant. It meant that you, as you're reading the question, you you have identified answers that you know are inaccurate. I don't think there is a way. I took it years ago, and I don't think in the test taking software there is a way to mark out eliminated answers.
Well, maybe there is, because I've seen tests quite recently where you can put a flag. So if you do not answer the question, you can put a flag, and then you can easily find out. The other possibility, and there was the same question on the discussion forum, and I think I replied already. Then you may have the overview of your questions. You have you complete, and you have the submission for grading in 2 steps. So step 1 closes and takes you out from the question mode, and you see all the questions, and you would see maybe shaded or different color for those that are answered and those that are not answered. So you would have 1 to 65, and you can identify, okay, this one that's a different color, this one is shadowed, so let's go to this one. There should be, and I remember Lydia saying that yes, there is a way before final submission to go back to those questions that you haven't answered without really going through all 165 one by one. So there should be a way, but maybe now Lydia is on vacation. She should be back, I believe, next week or already this week. So we can ask her again. Hopefully next week she will be here. But I'm pretty much sure that this is the way. And before the final submission, you can double check and you see what is answered and what is not. All the quizzes I've seen over the past couple of years, they have this kind of functionality. I hope it answers the question. So let's move to this discussion question. Can you read it, Jenny, please?
Yes. To preserve the independence and value of the audit function, the regulatory authorities should routinely request the audit reports. And I see that someone has already provided their answer. Does anyone else? I see them popping up.
Okay, is it, write it in the chat. Is it true or is it false? What do you think?
Everyone is coming in consistently. I don't know, Kamala, are you looking?
No, I can't see it because I have the presentation mode.
Okay. The majority, I don't know how many people are on the call, but I think I don't see more responses popping up. So the majority of the answers are false.
And yes, you are right, because they should not routinely request that. They can. In very specific situations, for example, when they are investigating suspected fraud or similar situations, or there might be even criminal investigation ongoing, then yes, the audit reports then can be requested and should be provided. But this is very rare, I would expect, and we usually don't see that, and we should not be seeing that. And if it happens, if there is an inspection at your site, the site should not have the audit report in the first place. They should have the audit certificate and a thank you letter and confirmation letter with agenda and such things. They should not have the full audit report. But if it's, for example, sponsor or inspection or CRO inspection, and the inspector asks about that, then the answer should be, I'm sorry, this is an internal document, and our SOPs or our policies mandate us not to provide them without a particular reason. So would you tell us what you are interested in, and maybe we can help you this way. So even a negative answer to the inspector can be framed in a supportive way, not like flat, no, that's not allowed. That would not create a kind of friendly atmosphere. But trying to find out, why do you need that? Can we help you somehow? But we cannot really provide a full report to you. So please tell us what you are looking for to help. Anyone has a experience with inspection, either rightfully or not rightfully asking for audit reports? Or why do you think it's a good idea to keep them as internal document? And anyone can unmute, anyone who don't mind being recorded, of course. And I can't see raised hands because I have an external camera that obscures the top of my screen with reactions. So just feel free, unmute, and put your thoughts forward.
I have an idea, Camilla.
Okay.
Possibly because it may give a preconceived notion or sway an inspector to start focusing or start looking in a certain area. It's just not quite as objective going in their viewpoint.
Yes. Yes, that's one thing. Anyone thinks about any other potential reason? Unmute and feel free to talk.
Well, hi everyone, this is Mo. I do think that, looking at a previous audit report may, in a way, include some biasness to the new auditor to kind of incline or tend towards the particular areas that were found to have some gaps. However, in my experience in audits, I did come across a unique situation where I was at one instance where I had to audit the CAPA process of the company, where I had to request for the previous audit report. And the rationale was just to be able to determine if the CAPAs were adequately addressed, written, closed, and actioned upon based on the audit, which, the CAPA in question was associated with the area. So that, I believe, was a unique situation besides that, I agree that we don't routinely ever request for the, audit reports as such.
Good point. And yes, if you audit a CAPA process, you need to know. But here we talk especially about the regulatory inspectors asking for the internal reports. And I can imagine some auditors, if they know that likely, if this not routinely request does not apply, and it is indeed they do routinely request and they are provided with these reports, the auditors may be reluctant to put everything in their report and how to phrase it, and be careful about the possibility of inspectors seeing that. So maybe if I am an employee of the sponsor or excuse me, or the CRO, I may be even cautioned by my superiors saying, don't put it there. We don't want inspectors to read this. We will resolve that, but don't put it in the report. So that can really introduce bias in the report and missing information or downgrading findings and all that. By the way, if I have a client and they ask me for their internal reasons to downgrade my findings, I don't do that. They are entitled to their opinion. I am entitled to my professional opinion. That's why they hired me. So I tell them, I'm sorry, I can't do that. But of course, you have your points, you have your view. So put it in writing, attach it to the report, keep it in your files, and that's perfectly fine. But I'm not going to change anything. And the only occasion when the client's QA director changed my report, I stopped collaborating with them because I took it as absolutely unacceptable. Even with, of course, without telling me, I found out accidentally. So it was like, bad red line, don't cross. So be also firm and be confident about your conclusions. You may be spending a couple of days at the site and even more days reviewing documents. So with your experience, you see something, you have your reasons to grade it this or that way, stick to that. If your client challenges you, which happens to me every now and then, I take it, okay, they are not asking me to change the rating or the classification, but I need to justify it better because I was there, they were not. They must understand from what I write the reasons for this or that and have enough supportive evidence that this is kind of as objective opinion as possible. So also don't get swayed. Not every question or objection is necessarily an attempt to influence you, but maybe it's just they don't really understand why. So make the justification clearer and better. Risk reporting. The sponsor should describe the quality management approach implemented in the trial and summarize important deviations from the protocol and predefined quality tolerance limits and remedial actions taken in the annual audit plan, IND annual report, investigator's brochure, clinical study report. So put a number in the chat, your favorite. It should be, again, quite easy to answer this one. But where do we report all these things on the study level? Jenny, do we see any answers? And do we have any fellow panelists? Because I don't see the participants. I see the number, but not who is.
Don't see. Yeah, we do have numbers popping up. Everyone's picking the same answer, which I am in agreement with. I don't think we have any other panelists.
Okay.
But
and the answer is?
It's 4.
And indeed, that's correct. Yes, that's exactly the right place. And by the way, if you see still the dinosaur era ICH E3 format of the report, I'm saying dinosaur era because it's 1996 and many things have changed since then. And there are sections that simply may not always, we may do things that are not fitting all the sections. We may be saying like we are missing something here. So although there is nothing titled risk reporting in this format, still should be there, should be in the clinical study reporting. And by the way, regulators are saying customize the E3 for your needs, for your study, put things on the edition, take out things that don't apply. So don't take it as something, engraved in stone, must not change. Still, some sponsors want it like that, and then you have half of the sections not applicable because of the type of the study. And it's just so funny or sad, depending on the point of view. So we have the answer in ICH E6, section 507. Would you take the next, Jenny?
Yes. Sorry, I got to minimize my, oh no, I can see. Okay, non-compliance with the protocol, SOPs, GCP, and/or applicable regulatory requirements by blank should lead to prompt action by the sponsor to secure compliance.
And the possible answers are members should be of the sponsor staff, an investigator, an institution, an investigator, institution, or members of the sponsor staff, an investigator / institution. So who fits there? Write in the chat.
Okay, waiting. Everyone's thinking. We got some answers coming up. Everyone's also again picking the same answer. Everyone seems to be in agreement. And the answer everyone is selecting is, I'm just waiting and hesitating a little to see if anyone else answers. The majority picked number 4.
And that's indeed, again, correct. Section 521 in the ICH E6. Because anyone who is non-compliant, doesn't matter who it is, whether it's could be IRB, review is delayed, could be investigator, could be, let's say, if the pharmacy is under the hospital direction, then the pharmacy or the sponsor staff or a vendor, then the sponsor is responsible to make sure that compliance is restored.
Yes, and a member of the sponsor staff could be the CRO staff as well.
Yes. Yes, whatever is delegated, still the sponsor is responsible. By the way, many times the thorough transfer of regulatory obligations in the US is understood as I transfer it, so it's not mine anymore, this responsibility. Many times less experienced sponsor companies take it this way. I transfer that. Go there, they are responsible. But I've heard the regulators, I heard Christy Cochran, I heard other regulators saying, no, it does not absolve the sponsor from their overall responsibility. So the sponsor still is responsible for delegated tasks, for oversight, for picking up actually the right parties to be involved, or if not picking up, to approve them. And if their CRO just goes on without asking the sponsor for approval, then that should be the first and last time. And they should be, basically it should come from the contract and the roles and responsibilities, where it clearly says who executes an action and who should be notified or who is approving, who is being consulted, and so on. But the sponsor should be approving anything that is done on their behalf. And again, if something is not done properly, the sponsor should make sure that that party starts appropriate actions to get back to compliance. Education. The sponsor should appoint auditors who are independent of the clinical trials or systems, qualified by observing a mentor, part of the sponsor's clinical team, qualified by training and experience. And the possible answers are 1 to 4, 2, 3, 4, 1 and 2, and 1 and 4. And you have this type of questions and potential answers also in the real exam, where you need to choose from combination. So more than one part of these answers contributes to the total to have the whole answer correct.
Yeah, and we have people answering fairly quickly to this one. And so far, everyone is in agreement. And they, like, I talk slow. I'm like waiting to see if anyone else is going to pick one. Everyone is going with D, 1 and 4.
You are wonderful. And yes, it is correct. Independent of the clinical trial systems and qualified by training experience. We actually talked about the qualification just a moment ago. You would not believe how much time it took me to create these questions, to try to imitate the types of questions that are in the test and take something from the GCP and put potential answers that are not correct, but that they would not be immediately striking you as something very stupid and very wrong. So yeah, creating questions in quizzes, that's not something for a couple of minutes. If you ever tried, I guess you agree. Reporting. Jenny, would you take this one? You are on mute.
Sorry, thank you. I have a little bit of noise around me and I keep muting it. A clinical QA department should have the written procedures that describe the following: conducting an audit, audit planning, reporting an audit, audit planning frequency, audit planning / frequency. And so let's see what people are saying. No one's answered yet. Everyone's kind of processing it.
Yep,
Got a little bit of variety here. Most people are going with one answer, but Sorry, I'm also reading again. I'll give people a minute to process, and then most people have gone with one answer. A couple of people have gone. Most people went with D. A couple people chose C. And I think everyone has answered that is going to answer. I think that we have all the, I don't think there's anybody else to answer.
So we have most
I know what
D.
Most are D, yes. A couple people picked C.
What would you pick, Jenny?
I think I would pick C because that covers everything. All of the above is, it's kind of tricky because all of the above is you've got audit planning twice. And then, you know, C is audit planning and, you know, you've got audit planning and frequency in that same. And that's tricky because if you're thinking of vendors, you want to look at frequency as well. So I would do C, but.
So you don't think that the reporting should be anyhow?
Oh, God grief. You're right. I'm like got distracted by the whole audit planning thing. Yes, all the above. See, thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah,
Good grief.
You see, just if you think about once, yeah, and the missing part, should it be part of the procedures or should it not be part of the procedures, or it doesn't really matter, or it's covered somewhere else? I see the confusing part now. The audit planning, that was meant more for a specific audit, the one I am going to do now. So how do I plan to do a given audit? But the audit planning, the frequency, that could be also an audit program. But I agree, I should have, yeah, that's the feedback. I should improve the question. It's totally skipped my eyes when I was reading it, and I was reading it twice today. And now I see it so clearly, thinking, I got blind. So we are all learning. Yeah. If we read again, it's 519.3, then it does not say, it does not mean that every single part of this, like conducting, planning, reporting, developing audit plan, needs a separate SOP. That I'm not saying that. It can be actually covered by one SOP. And that maybe I would split it for convenience, like developing audit plan would be one thing, and then the audit itself, how to plan it, conduct it, report it, that would be another one. And since we may have different audit sites, vendors, technology providers, which is a type of vendor anyway, then these may be sitting any specifics in appendices. So what would be fitting for a CRO or a site or a vendor? These are not 100% overlaps. There might be some specifics. So I don't need to have thousands of SOPs. And it's actually very discouraging for people. Imagine joining a company, and I guess many of you have this experience. You join a company, you are expected to get trained on SOPs. You open nowadays the learning management system, and you see the hundreds of activities and hundreds of SOPs you should read, understand, remember, and follow. Isn't it intimidating? And do we really need all them separately? What is interrelated and what is not? What deserves its own SOP because there is something specific, or it's for a very particular group of people? And what can be put together? What is the process logic? You know, charting a process always helps to see it from the very initial steps up to the last ones. So can I cover the whole process? Do we need anything specific that perhaps a work instruction would be more fitting if I need to describe steps, like do one, this, two, this, three, that? That is work instruction, really. So we may have combination of documents, but I would always encourage you who are responsible for designing quality management systems, improving quality management systems, take a look at it and try to find out how to streamline things and how to make them logical. Because if they are logical, it's also easier to follow, and it's less likely to deviate. So the improvements are not to patch SOPs or create new SOPs. And God forbid, if you are sitting on a CRO part, to change your SOPs after every single sponsor's audit, because then you would be doing nothing else but that, changing your SOPs. Have a justification why you do things the way you do it. A storyboard, a decision tree, a flow chart, a process chart, whatever, and you would pass even an inspection. Know what you do, what should be the right way to do it, where some regulations apply, and then put it together, put your playbook, and follow it. Companies do not need thousands of SOPs. That's okay. If we talk about Pfizer, or if we talk about companies that have clinical part and manufacturing and CMCs and internal labs, because they do some GLP work, that's a different story. But these are different areas. But if I'm in a pretty simple organization or a department, and I still have hundreds of SOPs, then if I do an audit, I would be looking at these SOPs thinking, okay, which are redundant, possibly contradicting. So make your own life and life of your colleagues easier, and for your organization also a better chance to do great. And instead of kappas and deviations, follow on the job to be done. Risk review. Let me just put on my lights, sorry. Sponsors should periodically review risk control measures at the following frequency: at least annually, at least biennially, meaning every 2 years, according to the written procedure, every 6 months. Leave it up to the individual project teams. This should be super easy to answer.
Yeah, everyone's answers are popping up pretty quickly, and everyone seems to be in agreement. I'll give a couple more people a chance, and then we'll
and since I don't see the answers, I'm curious to know.
Yes, everyone is selecting 3.
Perfect, exactly. Because it should fit the organization and what they do and their size and operating model, outsourcing everything, keeping it in-house, combination of both. So yes, always according to the written procedure, whatever the procedure is. That's the guidance. FDA inspectors or any other regulatory inspectors, they can cite you against regulations and against your written procedures. So if your written procedure says that you would follow a guideline, then that guideline applies. But the inspector would not cite you against the guideline, but against your SOP. So that's just a small difference. Guidelines are typically expressing the current thinking, as you know, of the agencies. Escalation advising. So during an audit of a clinical site, the sponsor's auditor discovers that a participant has been overdosed during the last 3 study visits. I just read about such a case very recently.
Yes, I just read a warning letter yesterday.
Yeah. The auditor should immediately do the following: notify the FDA, inform the PI of the discovery, follow the audit plan for escalation, follow the SOP for escalation. And the possible answers are all of the above, meaning 1 to 4, 1 to 3, 2, 3, 4, 2, and 4. So think about it. Again, these combinations can be a little bit tricky. Sorry, you see the correct answer, which should show up at the next click. Okay.
Well, everyone was, the individuals who had responded had selected that C, so.
Okay, let's talk about the why. So am I, as auditor, responsible to notify the FDA? Well, there is definitely a situation. One is important deviation by default, but is important deviation immediately reportable? No, it is not. It might be the IRB asking for something like that. So the investigator, once you inform the investigator should inform the IRB, but it's not my call. So what I need, I should inform, of course, the principal investigator, and then follow my audit plan for escalation. Do I have the escalation part in my audit plan? It's not always in it. So think about it when you prepare your audit plans. What if it might be covered for independent audits in contract? Like what the sponsor wants to be informed about immediately. Or it may be sponsor SOP that I should read and follow for that particular thing. And follow the SOP. So there should be an SOP for escalation. Hopefully there is one. If not, then something is missing. Could be part of another SOP, but there should be something about escalating issues like that. It's a safety problem. It's because the overdose participant can be at the risk of side effects or any. Imagine if there is a kind of cumulative effect of the drug, and then suddenly depends also how big the overdose is. Is it calculated and is it slightly different? Was it miscalculated and instead of, let's say, 1.25 milligram, it's 1.26 milligram, it's probably not a big deal. If it's twice, 3 times, 10 times more, then Houston, we have a problem.
And Pamela, were you referring to the warning letter that I've gone blank. Was actually I was on LinkedIn last night and yesterday and it circulated. But
I read it as well. Yeah.
Yes, that was kind of crazy. You know, the how extreme that overdosing was.
I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe something like that can happen. Wrong calculation, but not just little, like 10 times.
Yeah. That was in a pediatric study, you all. If you haven't read the letter, I would read it.
Yeah.
Yeah. The site was a little too nonchalant about it, you know.
Yeah, they were like, okay, nothing happened. We did not observe any side effect. So why are you making so much fuss about it? Thank God nothing happened. Just really go to the church and light a candle because you were just blessed. But it did not have to be that case. So unbelievable things happen out there. And let me give everybody a chance, get out of the presentation mode. I want to see you. I'm missing the interaction. So I will stop sharing now. And at least I can see who is here. Do you have anything that you would like to discuss? Any kind of advising, auditing, reporting, communication, maybe some communication issues or some communications really good tips that you would like to share, or questions from your daily situation? Take the opportunity. We have last 5 minutes. Unmute, write it, whatever you find more convenient.
Hey, Camilla, I don't want to out myself as unaware, but with the audit plan escalation, is it generally expected or requirement that your audit plan includes escalation procedures?
There is no requirement unless it's defined in an SOP that it should be there.
Okay.
So I don't have it typically in my audit plans, but I have it clarified with the sponsor in my work agreement. What do they want? What kind of situations they want to be informed about immediately, like giving them a call, whatever.
Yeah, and it sometimes it'll be in the SOP and you just in your plan refer to the SOP. You know, but yeah, there should be some instruction.
Yeah, I should not keep it for myself. And as a let's say this is my habit. I tend to inform, especially if it's a kind of complex audit, I tend to inform in a short summary my client every day, how did it go? And typically they are very, very, very pleased for this. So some clients want a summary when I finish, like within a day, if the audit was uneventful. Some clients, they are extremely happy to be informed, like on an ongoing basis. Really, really, really depends. But keeping them informed also gives them kind of reassurance, especially if you work as an independent auditor, but even if you are an employee, that they know what's going on, they are part of the process, and that either everything goes as planned or there are some issues. So things should not be coming as big surprises. Suddenly, you know, there was a big issue, and it comes 5 days later. You may have a general SOP that talks about escalations, and it's not just a GCP audit. Could be internal audit, could be anything that would potentially damage the organization.
Yeah, I know that's something we talk about with our sponsors a lot, is that, you know, we try to keep those tight timeframes if anything were to ever come up, to keep them in the loop, you know, as soon as possible, because, you know, obviously with I think adverse events have those reporting timeline requirements, or serious adverse events.
Yeah, and it's not for fun. Because that's a very simple regulatory reason behind. Because if the serious adverse event results in death or is life-threatening, then it should be reported by the sponsor, processed by PD, pharmacovigilance, and reported to the regulatory authorities within 7 calendar days.
Yep.
No matter if you have bank holidays included, weekends, and so on, different time zones. If it's a kind of normal serious adverse event, any other reason, it's 15 days. And it looks like, okay, it's enough time, but it's not that easy to create, say, the end-looking science report or any other format, or a SUSAR report if it's applicable, to make the analysis. In double-blind studies, you may have teams who are unblinded, and they should be looking, okay, is it potentially SUSAR, meaning is it drug reaction, meaning the patient is taking our drug, not a comparator, not placebo, or is it not such case? In open label studies, it's easier because everybody knows everything. But double-blind studies, they are more complex, and you have more different groups involved in reviewing, in analyzing. Maybe they need additional information, so they go back to the reporter, wait for the answer, and have the case. There are 4 basic things that must be in place for reporting to the regulatory authorities: the reporter, the patient, the event, and the suspect drug. All other things can be supplied later, but without these 4, it's not an acceptable report. So some clarifications are needed every now and then. That's why it's really very, very important to keep the assay reporting timelines, inform our investigators why it's important. It's not just for fun. And for reporting to our management, well, if I find out that the investigator committed fraud, and I'm pretty sure about that, that has a huge impact on the organization, right? So that would be something I would pick up the phone, or as it happened in one of my clients' companies years ago. Sorry, we are over, but let me just give you this example. Imagine a CRO subcontracted by a global CRO, and in their country, one particular site, for specific reason, changes in regulations and so on and so forth, lacking tracking system, which drugs are expiring, which aren't expiring, on the sponsor side, CRO side, site side. Yeah, course, whoever needs to drop off, please feel free to go. You don't expect patients to be given in a study expired drugs, right? And it happened for 9 months. And since the initiation that was delayed, all the study patients in a breast cancer study, advanced breast cancer study, were given expired medications.
Oh man.
So if you find out something like this, it's the red line that you need to call, because this is like, okay, shit hit the fan.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sorry for expressing it so naturally,
I mean,
but that's exactly it.
that's accurate.
So yeah, when this happens, you don't waste a second of time, because you need to somehow try to contain the damage. Think about, can something be done? Like, can we analyze the sample of the drug to see other significant changes in the composition, deterioration, and any byproducts, and so on? This was a case that resulted actually in a change in EMA regulations mandating that every form where anything related to study drugs is captured, like inventory logs, dispensing logs, and so on and so forth, must have a column for expiry date. Before that, it was not always the case. So, yeah. I mean, it's common sense and sound judgment what needs to be escalated immediately, and what is not really a huge deal.
Yeah, for sure.
With that, I will leave you for the rest of the day and see you next week. Looking forward. And if you have any questions in the meantime, put them in the SQA Connect, in the study group Connect page. I'm getting the notifications, my colleagues are getting the notifications, so we will do our best to support.
Excellent.
Thank you very
so
much. Have a lovely day and the weekend ahead. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.